The next thing I wanted to start talking about this week, and when you look at the schedule, Dwenger and Snider, always one of the premier games every year. This season, because it's not directly for an SAC championship, maybe not has the same panache, pizzazz, if you will. But this is an interesting matchup because when you score compare, Snider only lost by a few points to Cathedral this past week up here in Fort Wayne. A couple weeks ago, boy, it was a tough night for the Saints, 42-3 against Cathedral. So if you score compare on their most recent common opponent, you'd say, boy, Snider's going to win this game hands down, but that might not be the case.
That's not the case at all. When these two teams meet, it's a close game. The last 3 years have been decided by 10 points or less. It's 4 wins in a row for Dwenger, but as good as Dwenger was last year, and they made the state championship game, Snider took them to 46-45 double overtime before a big goal line stand saved the day for the Saints. So this is going to be close. No matter what the scores of other games are. Snider, Dwenger, they're two rivals. They go at each other hard. It's going to be a very, very close game. You know, a week ago, my opinion would have been very different. I would have said Snider hasn't beaten a good team yet this year, which they haven't. But they're getting better, like I said earlier. They are getting better. They played Cathedral very, very competitively, and they played Northside very, very competitively. So they figured some things out, and they're getting better. I still think that Bishop Dwenger gets it done, though, because they have really shown when you can knock off Chittard, that's very, very impressive. I think Dwenger wins a close game this week. One
of the things I think that'll be interesting to look at in this game is line size, because as we've mentioned, Dwenger, when they come out, they don't have that big Tony Springman, that size, that the all-airport team type size, and Snider does. I mean, Snider's got some really big guys on that offensive line, especially. That said, how big of a factor do you think Snider's passing game will be? Because you know with John Nelson they're going to be able to run the football, but the big question I think is if they bottle up the run, if Dwenger does, is Snider going to be able to throw the ball effectively enough to win?
Well, both offenses are going to have to be very, very balanced in this game. You can't beat a team the level of Snider and Dwenger with a one-dimensional, unless you have an unbelievable superstar like, let's say, Jalen Smith of Bishop Lures.
Okay.
You could do it that way, but then again, they have James Kanapke at quarterback. So both offenses are going to have to be very, very balanced because you're right. They will bring a safety down to help stop the run, and that opens up the passing attack. But conversely, if they leave the safety back there, then that opens up some angles in the running game and some gaps along the line. One thing Snider hasn't done effectively this year is utilize their size. Quite honestly, up front, they look a lot better on paper than they have on Friday nights. But obviously, they're figuring that out. They're making adjustments, and they're getting better. So, you know, it could be a situation this week where Snider's size plays a role, but it hasn't against the best teams so far this year.
On the other side of the football, how much improved is Bishop Dwenger's offense knowing what they have at quarterback as opposed to maybe earlier in the season? I know Dalton Wheeler started as the starter. He had some bruised ribs. He had some injuries, some fatigue at certain stretches. And now, you know, Fiacable's only a sophomore, so you really didn't know how he's going to respond to SAC play, especially being that young. But now that they're more they got their feet in the trenches as far as the quarterback position goes.
Right.
How much has that improved what they've been able to do?
Well, I'll tell you about Mike Fiacable. He threw for over 200 yards against Chittard. Anybody that does that, he's the real deal. I don't care if he's 15, 16 years old or not. The kid can play. And Dalton Wheeler has found his new role in a successful program in running the ball, had over 100 yards rushing against Chittard. So, you know, like I said again, Dwenger has made adjustments. They figured out different roles for different kids, taken advantage of their strengths, minimized their weaknesses. And so, yes, they're going to have to be balanced just like Snider is. Because, again, Snider has the big defensive line, although they lost their best defensive player a couple weeks ago to a knee injury. So that weakens their defense a little bit. But, yeah, Fiacable, if he can throw against Chittard, he can throw against Snider. And if Wheeler can run against Chittard, he'll run it well against Snider as well.
Your pick?
I think Dwenger wins a very, very close game.
I'll go with Snider in a close game, maybe a field goal game. It seems like when Snider plays these close games, there's always a field goal that changes something on the line. Yeah. So I'm going to take Snider by 3. You'll take Dwenger by just a couple.
I would say Dwenger by a touchdown or less.